with episode 20 of Palmetto Politics. I'm Shannon Grady and my co-host.
John Cummings, good morning.
And folks, we have an exciting lineup of things to talk about today, which has now made its way to the national stage, courtesy of former Congressman from South, Trey Gowdy. Last night on his show on Fox, one of the last vestiges of anything worth watching on Fox since they've now ousted Dan Bongino and technically Dan left of his own accord, and Tucker Carlson, and there's mixed messages on how Tucker left, or I don't know. Anyway, they're gone. So I'm thinking that we might be seeing, if Hannity goes, that will pretty much be the end of the Fox News era, and it will all but implode. But anyway, so Trey Gowdy was on last night, and he had a great show talking about what's going on here in South Carolina. So I'm going to play a little bit of that so that you can hear what he had to say. So hold tight.
Not just any state legislator, but one who votes on judges and serves on the committee with judges. Yes, this defense attorney is a lawmaker and a judge maker. He decides who can run and then votes on who can win. Can you imagine walking into a courtroom and there's a lawyer on the other side who both screams and the very judge you are appearing before? Does that inspire confidence in our system? Does that seem like a level playing field? But that's what happens in my beloved home state of South Carolina. Lawyers screen the very judges they appear in front of and elect or re-elect those very same judges. Crime victims don't screen or elect judges. Cops don't screen or elect judges. Prosecutors don't screen or elect judges. But in South Carolina, criminal defense attorneys can and do include a criminal defense attorney in the middle of this secret get-out-of-jail-early deal. So here we are. A Democrat lawyer legislator who screens and elects judges gets a judge to sign an order one day releasing a convicted murderer from prison. And all of that in a state allegedly run by Republicans.
Yeah, so I thought Trey hit the nail on the head. And of course, the lawyer legislator is none other than Todd Rutherford. And Mr. Rutherford is a very interesting character, and I'll use that word to be nice. I have other words I would prefer to use, but this is a family
show, right?
You're right. So what are your thoughts just on hearing this being covered by Trey Gowdy?
Well, it's certainly good to get the national spotlight on this story. And one of the things that we've talked about from the beginning of this show is the obvious impropriety of having lawyer legislators pick judges. This is one of only 2 states where the legislature picks the judges. Everywhere else, at least in 48 of the 50, the people select the judges through the election process. But as we said from the beginning, it looks exactly like what it is. You have a legislature that's dominated by lawyers just because of the way it's set up. The legislature only meets 5 months out of the year. And let's be honest, there are very few people who could put their lives on hold and leave their businesses for 5 months out of the year and go up to Columbia 3-4 days a week to do the business of the legislature. That's the people's business, really, and then go back to their jobs. When you are part of a law firm, you can work that out. And obviously the payoff is tremendous. And this is it's just one more example of the constant corruption that occurs. And it's something that needs to be changed. I know that they've approached this in the legislature, but it certainly needs to be either through the elective process or have the governor do it through an advisory board. There has to be some way to stop this, because this is probably the most egregious example we've seen.
Absolutely. In fact, it's so egregious that I have in my hand a press release from our state solicitor, Mr. David Pasco, and I'll read it. It says, the Smalls family, which this is the family, is going to be joining Solicitor Pasco and other lawmakers this morning to urge judicial reform. In Columbia on Tuesday, April 25th at 10:30 a.m., Lily and Carl Smalls will join Solicitor David Pascal, Sheriff Leon Lott, and a bipartisan group of lawmakers in the lobby of the State House to urge the House and Senate to take package this year. Mr. and Ms. Smalls, of course, their son Carl was killed in a nightclub shooting in 2002. He played briefly for South Carolina's football program before transferring to North Carolina's football program, where he was currently playing when he was shot and killed by Mr. Price. Now, what is interesting is that his lawyer, who represented him on the sentence reduction, of course, is a legislator, Mr. Rutherford, and a member of the Judicial Merit Selection Committee, charged with selecting committees who can then run or be selected for judicial office. I find it interesting they use the term run because they don't run.
No,
I mean, they're just picked and they work out their little deal and they're
yeah, and they even narrow the field,
right,
on who's eligible.
Correct. Lily and Carl Smalls trusted our judicial system, and when they were told their son's killer would remain locked up until March of 2038, Solicitor Pascal, the Department of Corrections in March, warning that this cold-blooded murderer will be released in the next 2 hours because of a secret sealed court order obtained by a lawyer legislator. Again, Todd Rutherford. On April 20th, 2023, the South Carolina Supreme Court unsealed Price's release order revealing procedural deficiencies and raising questions about the accused to justify Price's release. The Attorney General is now seeking a bench warrant to return Price to custody. Quote, no family should have to endure this injustice and renewed pain that this has caused the Smalls. Both the House and the Senate have legislation pending that could have passed immediately to improve transparency and remove the undue handful of lawmakers on the judge selection process. So, folks, stay tuned. Local news will be covering that again at 10:30. This is, we've talked about this since our show started, the fact that there's a conflict of interest in allowing judges to be selected by lawyer legislators. Again, they're then presenting their cases before these judges that they put in position. And so it puts that burden of, oh my gosh, this is the guy who hired me. So I want to make sure that as much as possible, I rule favorably to remain in this position. And that is just absolutely not the way our judicial system or should function. Now, I took a look at Mr. Rutherford's positions, and he's also on the ethics committee. Now, the hypocrisy standing, I believe that he should be in positions until this entire thing is adjudicated, which also includes the Ways and Means. So what say you, John?
A couple of things. This is not a Democrat-Republican issue because David Pasco, if I'm not mistaken, is a Democrat.
That is correct.
It's just one miscarriage of justice after another. And here's, I guess, the buried lead. If you're in a position that Mr. Rutherford's in and you pull off a deal like this and you get caught and you lose your seat, what are you losing? He goes back to his firm. He's still a very successful lawyer. It's not going to change his life. And what does he lose? Whatever he makes in the legislature, which might be $10,000 a year. So, that's the buried lead there. What's the risk? He's going to lose that job. Well, that's all right. He loses some political pull, but they'll find somebody else to fill his spot. So this whole system has to be overhauled, and it needs to be done as soon as possible. And like I said, this is not a Democrat-Republican issue. This is a justice issue. And, you hear people screaming about social justice, social justice. First of all, social justice is nonsense. What we want is justice. Right. And for that family, I can't imagine, you want to talk about the ultimate salt in the wounds. Your son gets murdered, and then some backroom deal is going to let the murderer out. Well, unless they had some real good reason to do that, and I know they don't, it's just a complete miscarriage of justice. And like I said, it's just one after another, and it shows you the system is corrupt and it needs to be completely changed.
Yeah, I find it interesting that this is the same lawyer legislator who famously stood up a month ago in the State House and argued with the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, Adam Morgan, basically about the VW bill, saying that we should not, talking to Adam, saying that we should not rely on our constituents' opinions, but rather the chamber lobbyists, because they're the ones that know how to make the money. To which Representative Morgan said, listen, no, I came to Columbia as a representative of the constituents, the people of my district, not the businesses, not the chamber. And it seems like Mr. Rutherford has forgotten his role to be a representative. You don't represent the big business interests. You don't represent the chamber interests. You represent the people who elect you. And so what I would say to all of those individuals who are in his district, it is on you to make sure in this next election cycle, 24, that you replace Mr. Rutherford with someone who actually respects you and will represent you and your voice and not the voice of the folks with the money. Because it seems pretty clear that he is all about making secret backroom deals, even at the expense of allowing a murderer to go free. In addition, John, there is a bill to much more serious in terms of being caught with that than your other drugs. And Mr. Rutherford has flat out said this bill will not pass. He is trying to create a roadblock to prevent that bill from getting through, because his primary role seems to be defending individuals who are criminals.
Yeah.
So if that is his mentality, that the criminal should have more rights than we, the people of South Carolina, I don't know what else the constituents in his district need to hear, see, or he's not the guy. You better find somebody else, and let's get him out today.
Yeah, and that's a national issue, because what's going on is the overwhelming majority of the Democrat Party seems far more concerned with protecting the rights of the criminal rather than the rights of we the people. And really, that's an epidemic. And if somebody's going to run against this representative in his district, and who knows if he'll still be there by the time the term is over, but if they're going to, they could just play the cross-examination of Adam Morgan. They could just play that on a loop.
Yes.
And of him saying that, don't you think that you should be representing the Chamber of Commerce rather than the people in your district? That's all you need to know about the entire thought process of what is really become this big cabal of Republicans and Democrats.
Right.
That they think that that's far more important of representing the Chamber of Commerce and business interests rather than we the people. And I think that going forward, I think ultimately that's really why the left and a big part of the Republican Party is scrambling, because they realize that the populist movement is growing over their movement, that it's the tentacles are going further and further and further, and you're beginning to see people come together that normally would never come together. And what they're doing for the time being, if you watch, they'll put aside some social issues, but what they're doing is they'll go out and attack this whole, illicit marriage between corporate America and the government. And I think that's what scares the left, and I think that's what scares the establishment Republicans, and I don't know if they're really ready for what's coming, because I think eventually it's going to be a tidal wave. Once the tentacles get into the communities that never vote for people that are Republican, it's over for both of them.
Right. It's interesting because I think you and I are both at a meeting a couple weeks back where Solicitor Pasco was there. The methods or the means by which we can change this judicial reform. And he noted that if we were to try to do a law, it's going to require sort of an amendment to the state constitution. But there are ways in which we could do it with laws so that our state representatives are actually created. I think it was like a created committee, and then the governor would play a role in it, as opposed to having it be an arduous position to get this amendment to change the Constitution. So I know he'll do a very good job of hopefully explaining that today during his press briefing at 10:30, because folks, this has got to change. Continue to stand by and say, well, it's not me, it's not my family. Well, your family could be next. And again, if you're not paying attention to what's going on with the poisoning of our young people with fentanyl, this is a major, major crisis. We found out the guy down the street sold your son or daughter poison, knew that it was poison. Your son or daughter, of course, dies, and then they get to walk scot-free because they've got an attorney like Mr. Rutherford who just says, whatever. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. We cannot allow that to exist in the state of South Carolina. So we have got to rise up. use our voices, make phone calls, send letters. Email doesn't work as well. I will be honest with you. Your phone calls and your letters, they do work. And then we got to show up. We got to start protesting outside of these law firm offices. We got to protest outside of these offices and let them know that we will not simply let this pass and continue with the same old, same old. So it is imperative that you get involved and you not just sit back and do nothing. To that end, I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but here there are a couple billboards that have just gone up, and it is sponsored by a group called Fentanyl Kills You. And unfortunately, one of the photographs on that billboard is my cousin Adam. And so he is one of the victims of the poisoning. And so I find it very frustrating that a man about the criminal than he does about these young men and women that are being slaughtered by a poison sent from China to the United States. So if it was just one thing that they were doing wrong, maybe you find a way to excuse it, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, it's a and it's not just the Democrats. Luke Rankin is also a guy who's in the Republican Party, allegedly Republican, and he sits on the same committee. So he is involved in selecting the judges as well. And he's also a lawyer legislator. So this is a problem that crosses party lines that we, the people, have got to pressure them to change. And if you put that pressure on them, they will succumb and they will make the right call.
Yeah. And again, not a Democrat Republican issue. I mean, this fentanyl bill, how could you come out against it? What's the reasoning? I mean, unless there's something in the fine print or in between the lines in that bill that would stop you from voting for it, I don't understand how you wouldn't. I know I said this before. Even in New York, I mean, I had a friend who lost his son. His son was in recovery and then went out, took a pill and then gone. And even in New York, they prosecuted the dealer for murder and he got convicted. Now, if they can do that in New York, you can certainly do that down here. So why are you getting in the way of a bill that's going to punish people responsible for peddling something that, last year I read that 70,000 people were killed with fentanyl overdoses last year. 56,000 people got killed in the Vietnam War. It was 9 years. I mean, horrible war, horrible. But 70,000 per year, and that number is going up.
Right.
And it's all the CCP and through Mexico. We know how that's working. It's all coming in over the border, and nobody wants to do a thing about it. And that's a whole nother debate for another time. But why would you come out against a bill that's going to punish fentanyl dealers? I just don't understand it.
Yeah, it defies logic. It really does. And the only thing I can say that would even explain it is the fact that some of these lawyer legislators are defense attorneys. And so, of course, they want to be able to ensure their clients that they're going to get them the least sentence. And so they don't want to support any kind of a bill that's then going to kind of handcuff them and prohibit them from getting their clients out early. Now, they've noted that this deal that was made behind closed doors with this judge who, was retiring the next day, violated all sorts of laws and regulations. I would even say that if it comes out that we can find out this is clearly done, it was done, illegally, whatever you want to call it, unethically, I'm all for disbarring. I think that that leads to, because as you noted, removing the legislature, he's still an attorney. He still gets to practice law. Well, you know what? Made some kind of dark backroom deal, some sort of shady, illegal deal. I think he should be disbarred.
Well, hopefully the South Carolina Bar Association is a little less woke than the American Bar Association, because or bar associations around the state. I mean, in New York, they disbarred Mayor Giuliani. I mean, really?
Yeah.
I mean, the guy was the most successful prosecutor in the history of the United States Southern District of New York. He put away everybody, and you go after him for something that and really what they went after him was about the laptop.
Right.
So now we know that was all legit. We knew anyway, but now everybody knows that it's legit and it wasn't Russian disinformation. And the Bar Association still goes after him. Well, guess what? Hopefully the South Carolina Bar Association is a bit more strict and a bit more serious about their members than the American Bar Association and bar associations around the country.
Absolutely. We've got to get And it really does start with what you and I have been doing. And I hope that folks understand this is not about me. This is not about you. This is about informing the public of what's going on in our state. Now, this particular case has gotten some high profile attention because, again, Trey Gowdy put this out. It's made it into the and now obviously at the national level, but there are lots of things going on at the state level that never see the light of day. I noted last time that it is very difficult to find out how our state senators are voting because unlike the House, where we have a Freedom Caucus who will share with us how our various legislators are voting, we don't have body in the state Senate, and they keep it very locked up in terms. You can go look up their votes online, but we need to have that information so that we can make those calls and say, look, what's going on up there? You know, you need to change your vote. You need to do X, Y, Z. Represent me, then I want to see the following things put into place. So we have got to do everything in our power to really closely watch this legislative body, both in the House and in the Senate, and make certain that they really are representing our positions. I thought what you said in the beginning was great, that, you know, South Carolina are conservative. We are Republicans as a whole, as a majority. But the legislators that we seem to be putting into office are anything but conservative. And it sort of flies in the face of everything that makes sense. Elect and re-elect people who do not represent our conservative values. And I'll say it again, here in Horry County, we have a Horry delegation made up of state legislators, both in the House and in the Senate, and not one single member is involved in the Freedom Caucus. They all raised their hands and took the loyalty oath to, you know, defend and protect the GOP, not the Constitution, the GOP, against anybody. They will absolutely support a bad legislator over helping someone. That to me is disgusting. It's vile, and it speaks to the problem that we have across the Horry County. And there, again, not one single legislator in Horry is a member of the Freedom Caucus. And folks, if you don't understand, pay attention. What it means is that everybody loves William Bailey. They think he's great. He's not a conservative. His voting record is somewhere around 60%. He's a moderate. Okay. Then you got Tim McGinnis. Same thing. Not a conservative. He's a moderate. And it goes down from there. They're the best.
Yeah, they're the higher ranked ones. Right? At least in Horry.
Higher
anyway,
ranked ones. It's pretty sad to think that we're going to have another election in 24 and people are just going to say, well, these guys are the incumbents, so we're just going to check the box and move on. And I'm sorry to say this, the fact that the governor and the lieutenant governor came down here and supported Heather Ammons Crawford speaks to their inability to recognize done it, because Heather Crawford is not a conservative. She is a moderate, leaning towards liberal. Carla Schratt, who pretends to be a Republican, as is Luke Rankin, Democrat, who pretends to be a Republican. He is such a liberal that there are people in the Democratic Party in South more conservative voting record than does Luke Rankin, a supposed member of the GOP. Folks, this cannot be allowed to stand. But I will tell you this, if you start calling these legislators and you start putting pressure on them, I have a suspicion that they're going to start voting a lot more conservatively. Because right now, the way it was explained to me, Smith is the guy who dictates what gets voted on and how it gets voted on in the State House. And if he wants a bill to pass or not pass, he puts that out, and then the members follow in line, hook, line, and sinker. Well, I don't remember voting to put him in as the dictator. Do you remember that, John?
No, and then that's just how it's stacked up. You know, that's how it lines up with the power structure at the legislative level. And I love when you hear a lot of quote unquote Republicans try to blame this whole, you know, like I call them the squishy Republicans, you know, the purple legislature. They try to blame it on people who've relocated down here from other states. And guess what? That's not the case. The overwhelming majority of the people that come down here from other states come down here because they want conservative values and conservative representatives. And then they find out that this isn't much better than where they came from, that there's a lot of shenanigans going on, and that there's this big cabal that pretty much runs the whole show. And people in the Freedom Caucus and groups like that, particularly the Freedom Caucus, they're the ones that are trying to cut the path forward so we can end that type of legislation.
Well, and what I'll say is that let's just take a couple of those names, for example. William Bailey, he's from here. He's not a transplant.
Right.
Heather
Right.
Amos Crawford, from here, not a transplant. Luke Rankin, from here, not a transplant. Case Britton, from here. So now Val Guess is technically a transplant, but he's a transplant from upper state South Carolina to here. So he's, come on, guys, that's not the case. We're not having. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think most of the people that come down here from other places, like I came down from New York, you're just so happy to vote for a Republican when you get here. You think it's the greatest thing. Wow,
Yeah.
I'm going to vote for a winner. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
And when you vote for the person, then you see what they're doing. You're like, hold on a minute. This guy is no more of a Republican than anybody that you're going to see. I mean, then they
a Democrat that I had to support.
Right. They vote squishy. That's what they do. And that all goes back, for me, a lot of it goes back to the open primaries, because what happens is the Democrats will cross over in the primary process. They'll vote for the quote unquote squishy Republican, and then the hard right Republicans like us, the conservatives, they end up holding their nose and voting for a Republican that they didn't want to vote for in the first place. That's what happens over and over and over again. That's how you get Nancy Mace. That's how you get Lindsey Graham, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think I've continued to watch, and they did talk about the fact that I was watching a video, and they were discussing the Lindsey Grahams and the Tim Scotts and the Nancy Maces and the Nikki Haley's. How do we get the state that is supposedly a stronghold for conservatism? Well, again, the people are conservative, but they're lazy. Folks,
yeah, most voters are. Most voters are. Most voters are woefully uninformed.
Yeah, but you don't take the time to become informed, and as a result, you get to tell you what you want to hear. They'll spill out all of the things. Oh, I'm a conservative. I believe all the things you believe. Well, how come your voting record does not follow that? Your voting record speaks to the opposite of what I believe. And then when you try to get something across, you say, "Listen, I need this bill passed." Like a good example is the bill for shared parenting that was struck down by Spencer Wetmore, who stood up and objected when it was brought up for a vote. And she didn't have a reason other than she said, "Well, I don't like that it's not being done in fashion." Really, so the basis of the merits of the bill, you voted on the basis of, pardon my French, you're a jerk attorney and you want to make sure that they follow some sort of rules the way, it's nonsensical. It really is. And what it really comes down to is you have a tit Rankin who nearly got beaten by John Gallman, and Mr. Gallman has been pushing for this bill to get passed. And I think Luke Rankin just has a sore spot. And so he's going to do everything he can to prevent it from coming into law, simply because he doesn't like Mr. Gallman. That's what I think.
And I don't think there should ever be a situation. Yeah, I don't think there should ever be a situation where one person in the legislature has the power to stop a bill. Not one person. If the governor wants to veto a bill, that's fine. That's the way it's structured. But these rules that they created, that one person could say, "Oh, no, we're not doing this." That's way out of line with any type of representative democracy that you should have.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have some major problems, and I think it's on everyone else's shoulders to make sure you inform yourself. We do this show 2 days a week, and it's an hour. And you can't tell me you don't have an hour in your car at some point in time to listen to some of the information that put in voter, and make sure that when you go to the polls that you know exactly the issues. And folks, it's most important that you go to the primaries. That's when we make sure that these folks don't get back into office. It does us no good if you only vote in the general election, because chances are a guy like Luke Rankin is going to get right back into office because and folks are just going to pull that lever for him. They're going to vote straight party, or not straight party. They're going to vote for the straight guys who've been in there already. That has to stop. But again, you can make phone calls. You can call these legislators. You can put pressure on them to tell them that we don't care what Merle says. We want you to vote the way we ask you to vote. And if you're not willing to do that, then we will get rid of you. Pure and simple. You will be gone. And that's what I hope we see in this next election, that there's a lot of folks fired.
Yeah, and we have to work 2 to 3 to 4 times as hard because of the way the deck is stacked. I mean, you're going against an incumbent. They obviously have the ability to raise funds very quickly. They have all the connections to do that. And you have the complicit media, which is basically the communications arm of this cabal that's in place. This on the national level, the media is the communications arm of the Democrat Party. Let's be honest with you. But when you look at what goes on the state by state level, here it's basically the media is the communications arm of this cabal of, we'll call them establishment Republicans, that really need to be shown the door.
Absolutely. Well, you go back to Crystal Matthews, the Democrat who was positioned, which was laughable, but she herself was a House representative, caught on a phone call to an inmate in which she said, we've got to put Democrats into the Republican Party, sleepers, whatever you want to call them, so that they can run as alleged Republicans and actually vote as Democrats. Well, we already see that. A great example of that. She was a Democrat, volunteered to help Hillary Clinton get elected, member of the Horry County Democratic Party here. I think her membership form said 2010. And when I asked her, I messaged her and said, when did you have the epiphany? When did you say, I don't like Hillary Clinton. I don't believe in anything she says. I believe in what Donald Trump says. And I've never gotten a response because I don't think that epiphany ever happened. She was the president of the Myrtle Beach Chamber of Commerce, which is another entity that we've got to rein in. The fact that organization gets $52 million from taxpayers and we have absolutely no oversight of that money is infuriating to me.
To make that leap from Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump is it's an impossible leap to make. You could even understand, not to get too deep into the weeds here, you could even understand somebody who's a Bernie Sanders type Democrat, who's, way left on every social issue, but is more of a populist. And there are many Bernie bros that are like that. You could see them making the leap over to a populist like Trump. You can. If they get to the point where they say, hey, look, the social issues right now, they're not as important enough for me. I'm gonna go over and let's look at the populist movement. It's kind of like the Bobby Kennedy thing. He's a Democrat. Look, he is a Democrat.
And he's a liberal.
And he's a Kennedy Democrat, though. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion for another time.
Exactly.
But you can see the similarities with the populist platform. You can see it between he and President Trump and the populist movement, the America First movement in general. It's just that total marriage, like I said, between corporate America and the government that they want to get rid of. So you can see that leap. But to go from Hillary Clinton, who is, one of the all-time big government people, who was, for that one, basically that, not to get into the whole one world order thing, the new world order thing, but that's what she's for. And that's what she's all about. And the whole Clinton Foundation thing, how you quickly turn around from that to MAGA, it's just an impossible leap to make.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's laughable, but people didn't know. And so they got behind her in District 61, and she was able to get Heather behind her and support her and to push her out there. And that is one of the reasons why she was able to win. So to my end, we owe a lot of this to Heather Ammons Crawford.
And all the chamber connections.
And the chamber connections. Now, listen, I'm going to tell you pointedly, Miss Ammons, approached me at some point in time about running for various positions, and we get the chamber behind you. Thank God that never happened. I did not have any connections with them whatsoever. And I think after a short period, they figured out, well, she's actually a conservative. We don't want her. And so they weren't so eager to get behind me. And I'm sure they don't particularly care that I'm out here hammering them daily with "Will Set You Free." And I hope that in 24 that Miss Ammons Crawford finds her way out of the state legislature and continues to either work with Russell Fry as his district 7th district coordinator, or she goes back to doing real estate and stays out of politics altogether. I'd be happy with that, actually. Crawford are dismal representatives of the people, and I think that it would benefit the county to have both of them no longer representing anyone, because they really only represent their interests and the interests of the chamber. And folks, $52 million is what the chamber gets, and we have no way to trace that. To that end, Mr. Bailey, he is probably the best in Horry County in terms of updating and letting folks know what's going on in the district. I frequently see his post on Facebook, and I applaud him for that because, again, he's the only guy I see doing that. I don't see the other ones doing that. He's the only one that does it. And one of the things he's been kind of hammering on is don't have a postal office. They got one of those little mobile units, and he was talking about the fact that the grass was growing up, and it just looked, it was an eyesore. And I just made the comment. I said, if we took $2 million of that $52 million that goes to the chamber, I think that would build a pretty nice post office there in Longs. But instead, as I've been explained, the $52 million that goes to the chamber is supposed to help them with putting out billboards and signs to get visitors from other states like Ohio and New Jersey, New York, etc., to come down and vacation in Myrtle Beach. But folks, let me tell you, Mayor Bethune has been a failed mayor because we have a serious crime problem in Myrtle Beach. And so folks are not going to want to come when in the middle of the day, you got shootings. You got a guy who pulls out a gun and shoots at a guy in a truck. And then the next day there's another shooting. And then we have it's insane what have the right people in positions of leadership. And that is our fault. That is we the people's fault because we continue to elect individuals who are anything but conservatives and who have anything but a principled stance on crime and how to deal with criminals. So, we've got a lot of work to do, but it does start with becoming informed. Now, for those of you who are active in the Republican Party, you may be aware that this was the month of reorganization, or March, April, and May. So last month was your local reorganizations at your precinct level. And then this month has been your county conventions. And there have been several conventions that have been held with the leadership being selected. And we know that in Greenville County, you had a guy by the name of Jeff Davis, who was the chair of the Greenville County GOP. And Drew McKissick, through some magical twist of fate, don't know how he did, pretty sure it's not legal, and said, you know what, I'm not going to let Jeff Davis, the duly elected chair of Greenville County, I'm not going to allow him to run the county convention. I'm going to take it over. And myself and Mark Minogue, we're going to go up there and we're going to make sure that it's run the way that we think it should be run. And so that was a clear attempt to, tilt Mr. McKissick's favor, but it epically failed because you see the results are that Mr. Jeff Davis was elected the state EC for Greenville County, and Miss Yvonne was elected as the chair. She will be taking over and running with the same America First that Jeff Davis was trying to run. I don't know who the vice chair is, but suffice it to say that the chair and the state EC are the most important. Charleston had a similar America First victory, as did York County. So it is pretty evident from all that I'm hearing and seeing that people are finally getting a belly full of the man in Columbia who runs around saying, but I got Trump's endorsement. I got Trump's endorsement. Well, I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it. Getting Trump's endorsement apparently has no meaning whatsoever anymore. Trump will endorse this statue behind me. It's pretty sad. He is gullible. He believes whatever he's told, and he then will go out and endorse people. And that's evident by the fact that, one, he endorsed Russell Fry, who's not a conservative. Two, because allegedly he made a video and said by name Jerry McDaniels, who, the people liked her so much they whipped her 110 to like 50 in the votes. And Reese Boyd is a liar. And he's an attorney who put a woman on the stand who plagiarized herself. Not plagiarized herself, what's the word? Perjured herself, rather. And that, of course, would be Jerry McDaniel. And, of course, he claims that, well, I didn't know. Yeah, you did. You commented on the video where she was down there in Florence County. So I'm just going to call it out. I'm sick of playing the games. I'm sick of playing pitter-pat around this kind of stuff. These folks are corrupt. They go out there and they pretend that they are one thing when they are absolutely another thing. So Mike Connett was elected as the state EC in the faux convention that was held here in Horry County. The people voted to suspend the convention because there is a huge mess that was created again by none other than Drew McKissick. Drew McKissick is probably one of the worst things to happen to the GOP in South Carolina ever. So he needs to go. has got to be removed. Go out there and give some serious consideration to Mr. Zoe Warren. We had him on our show last time, and Zoe was a Democrat up until 2012. Was that what he said, John? I
Yeah,
guess
I think
2012.
so. Yeah.
And I asked him the question. I said, okay, so what was it that? And he said that Christian. And he noted that in 2012, when there were some things going on with Muslims killing Christians, Barack Obama, who at that time was, his president, who had voted for an 8, and he said when he came out and said, yeah, well, we did the same thing in the crusade, causing to pause and say, what? That's apples and what are you doing? And so he wasn't yet ready to jump the divide from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party, but he basically walked away from the Democrat Party. So he did not vote at all. He said he spent the 2012 election just kind of praying, saying, what in the world? Couldn't vote for Mitt Romney, couldn't vote for Barack Obama. But by the time the 2012 election was over, he watched what Obama started seeing. It's kind of like that Paul, the Saul, on Damascus Road. And once you see, you can't unsee it. And so once he had those scales removed, he couldn't unsee all the things that Barack Obama was doing that were contrary to his beliefs as a Christian. And so ultimately he was asked to get involved in the Republican Party, and he did so. And since that time, he's been very active. Of course, most famously, he ran for lieutenant governor on the ticket with Mr. Musselwhite, and was unsuccessful, but kind of got his name out there. And so we had him on. Very, very intelligent man, really believes in America first, understands the principles of our Constitution, understands what it is to be a conservative, but he's not a vindictive guy. So a lot of folks want to go up there and they want to just kind of drum out some of the Drew McKissick bill. But what I got from Mr. Warren, and you tell me what you thought, I got from him is that he really wants to be a bridge builder, a guy who can mend fences and create a big tent Republican Party like we once sought to have, as opposed to now where you got Mr. McKissick up there trying to limit to actually get involved, trying to limit the number of people who are informed. So, what was your take on Mr. Warren?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's a very impressive guy, and what I find is that he is most thoughtful. He's not a guy who's just running his mouth. He's really thought these processes through, and I think he's prayed a lot on it, and I think it's benefited him tremendously, and he's very well versed in all of the topics. And I think one of the reasons that there's been several people who have jumped in to run for chair, which I think is a good thing, because they're all going to get to spell out exactly what's wrong with the Republican Party under Chairman McKissick. So, I mean, that's a good thing. As far as the counties that were successful in the reorg, just a word of warning: watch for the shadow groups, because they're coming.
Oh, absolutely.
We had it here in Ori. There is no way that Chairman McKissick is going to work with your group, and they will do everything to make sure that does not happen, including the fact that they'll withhold voter lists and they won't let you conduct your own reorg, which you just saw.
Right.
Whatever they have to do to keep America first people from taking over the party, they will do. And look, that is a national issue. It's happening in all states. And anytime that there is an America first group that is successful in taking over a county party, well, then the state GOP raises its ugly head and tries to squash you. And that's how you end up with the Chairman McKissick as the vice chair of the national party.
Yes.
So if they're doing it locally, they're going to do it all over the country. And that's why we have to work, like I said, 2, 3, 4 times as hard as they do.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that here in South Carolina, we have this loyalty oath, again, as I noted before, among the establishment members, where they all say, we promise we will not help anybody who's not an incumbent to run against someone. That is despicable, truly it is. But that same thing has now gone forward into the national level, and they're now basically requiring, if you're running for president, that you have to take a pledge that if you do not win, that you're going to endorse the eventual nominee. Are you kidding me? You cannot require someone to endorse another individual. Now, if you want to say, you can't run on a sore loser ticket, you can't go independent, right, or something like that. Okay, so be it. But to require them to endorse the eventual no, I'm not for that.
No, it's the
I'm not.
same. Yeah, it's the same mindset that creates lists. That's the
Mhm.
same mindset. Is that, hey, look, and they think that they have that much power that they can put you on a list, they can take you off a list, they can say, hey, take this loyalty oath. No, no, no. This is a free exchange of ideas, and guess what? If you don't like somebody, you don't have to support them. Period. Whether they're part of your party or not, you just stay out of the fray if you don't want to support them. That's all. And that's what this is all about. I know everybody wants, we have to unify. And look, the time for that is over.
Yeah.
There's people in this, to me, the people that are in the Republican establishment are just as dangerous as the Democrats are in many cases, because in many cases it's all the same cabal anyway.
Yeah, exactly. You got people here, for example, Dreama Purdue, who ran for state EC against the, Mike and Jerry. She was the past chair of the Horry County GOP, and then, co-chair serious funds. We had an audit done, and there was over $26,000 that were, who knows, misappropriated, embezzled. We don't know. And she has been numerous times sent with legal documents to submit all the receipts for this money that was spent. To date, she has submitted 0 receipts. So the fact that she had the audacity to even put her name out there as a potential candidate for any kind of a leadership position within a party when she is under a cloud of suspicion speaks highly of how bold these folks are. And, she loves to brag about how she has the ear of the governor. And I would just say to Governor McMaster, sir, you need to be paying attention to who has your ear, because some of these folks are not benefiting the people, and certainly not benefiting you. And I'd say the same thing to the lieutenant governor. She needs to be very careful about who she's aligning herself. I think that everything is a hunky dory. But as more and more people start finding out, we start uncovering some of these skeletons in the closet. We start shining some light onto some of these dark corners. I think some of the people in South Carolina are going to be like myself, fed up. I mean, I've had it. I'm done being nice. I'm done playing patty cake and trying to do, oh, well, let's see if we can't work. No, done with it. If you're not going to support our country, our Constitution, our conservative values, then I don't want you. I want you gone. Drew McKissick should resign, put his head down in shame, and walk away. He is an embarrassment to the state of South Carolina and anybody. You are ignorant. You are totally ignorant, don't understand the Constitution, don't understand conservative values, and you believe in a style of government that is on par with what we saw in Germany. If you believe in creating lists and coming in because you don't like who got elected and through backdoor deals or shadow groups, you do not understand the values that our founding fathers used to create this nation. And that is the absolute truth. You should be ashamed of yourself. Go to your pastor and ask him, well, pastor, do you think it's okay that we use, illegal, unscrupulous means for a party? The pastor's going to tell you, what? No. If you are not being honest and open and transparent, you're the opposite of that. And who's the author of confusion and lies and all of that? Well, I think we all know it's Satan.
Yep. I think, I agree with you. I think the time for compromise has passed. We're in a battle for the future of this nation, and it starts on Main Street and it grows from there. And people have to get involved this time. If not now, when?
Yep.
My honest opinion is there isn't going to be a when unless we get it together really quickly and people look deep into their hearts and say, how can I be supporting any or all of this? And they have to get together and they really have to get active. This battle that's coming up in 2024, it's not just the presidential battle, which is, that's another discussion for another time, but it's local. It's local. All these seats are up, and we're going to really have to get people to step up and run for office that normally would never run for office. And I know you probably considered yourself in that position and you ran, and I considered myself in that position and I'm not going to run for anything. And I just had enough and I ran up in New York. So I think ultimately what's going to happen is you're going to have people step up. They're just about at the breaking point. You're going to have people that never thought they would be involved at the political level to the point where they would run for office. I think you're going to see that next year. And I think it's going to be a very interesting election season if we make it that far. And
Right.
I'm dead serious about that.
Yeah.
This is
No, I agree with you, John.
this is all about to fall apart. This is not really a national show, but if you look at what's going on around the world and here with the border, and the government giving away our sovereignty, and another failure in Sudan, the inability to get Americans out of there and not have a path for them. I mean, it's just a disaster all around the world. Yeah, and what this Biden regime has done in tearing down this country in 2+ years is just mind-boggling. It's just mind-boggling.
It really is. The speed with which they've been able to destroy
on every
our
level.
nation.
On
Yeah.
every level, you can come up with an issue. They are wrong purposely on every level.
Exactly. And don't misunderstand. We're not just picking on the Democrats or whatever. Again, this is a nonpartisan issue. We have got terrible people in office, whether they have an
Across
R
the
or
board,
a
right.
D. Yeah, it's bad. But yeah, to your point, Susan Rice, we were talking a little bit, this is a state and local program, but you can't not, talk about what's happening at the national level because it does certainly affect us. Susan Rice, who I believe, and I think John concurs, has really been the person behind the scenes running things at the White House. Well, she just resigned.
Very quietly.
Very cool. So
yeah, she got drowned out by Tucker Carlson. That's what happened. She got drowned, and then just to throw a little bit more shade on that, CNN got rid of Don Lemon on the same day.
Yeah.
So
So you got Don Lemon.
Tell me that's a coincidence? Yeah, there are no coincidences.
Now I'm not sure what's going to happen. I don't know whether they're going to, John and I were talking about this earlier, whether they being the Democrats and the Republicans, the cabal in DC, whether they're going to, because now President Biden has come out and said, I'm running again. I vote for me for, He famously did that on the campaign trail when running for president.
Oh yeah.
Vote for me for Senate. Yeah, that sounds good. But I'm not sure whether they're going to just try to impeach him because of this, the evidence on the laptop, not because of the laptop itself. The laptop is not the issue, folks. It's the content on the laptop, the evidence that supports that corrupt people in all of history and politics. This guy is bad business. Okay. So again, it's not the laptop. It is the content on the laptop. Now they may impeach him for that, or I think there stands a reason that they might be more inclined to go with the 25th Amendment and say, look,
right.
this guy capable of running. But they're not going to put Kamala Harris as president. She's worse than Biden in terms, look, at least with Biden, we can understand why he's such a failed mental candidate, because he didn't
have a good start to begin with. He was never the sharpest pencil in the box.
Right. Absolutely not. But with Kamala Harris, I'm sorry, folks, I'm just going to say it. I've never seen the level of ignorance that she displays on a daily basis. It's stunning. It is stunning.
You can't talk about issues, really. You really can't.
No, she can't complete a sentence. It's embarrassing. And they as a woman of color. Can we go back to picking people on the basis of their capabilities, not on the content, not on the color of their skin or whatever? Because I think we've seen how that worked out. So let's get back to voting in some quality candidates. So it'll be very interesting. I agree with you, John. That party is happy at all. I think I saw, was it CNN or MSNBC one did a poll in which they said 74% of Americans don't want Biden.
Right.
Folks,
and
that's bad.
And 70% of Democrats.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Which is a bigger number. And I think that they're trying to figure out a way to ease them out. And it's going to be really difficult because, as you mentioned, then you get Vice President Harris as the president, and then she has to select somebody to be the vice president, and the Congress has to approve that when a majority vote in both the House and the Senate. Whether that's all going to happen, I don't know. I do think that Susan Rice running away at this point is very telling.
Yeah, it's telling.
I'm not exactly sure what's coming, but the fact that she left so abruptly tells me that something is coming. When I saw Representative Comer the other day allude to the fact that there are so many Bidens on the payroll from China and Ukraine, et cetera, that they're not going to have enough people for a Christmas picture. That's what he said.
Yeah.
That tells you all you need to know. This is about to break. And Susan Rice, who is, I think, just, that's Obama's point person in the Biden White House. I think that her running is really very telling. And I saw something the other day that I thought was quite interesting. If you look at the Biden family fortune that they have,
Yeah.
well, what did they produce exactly to get the money that they have as a family? What did they do? If you
Nothing.
want, you could say what you want about Trump. Trump got spotted like $1 million by his father.
Right.
And then he grew a tremendous corporation. They built housing. They were in real estate. They built parks. They built golf courses. They have produced.
Yes.
And it's a tangible production
Right.
production
You
item.
can put your
You can
hands
see-
on what they
right.
made.
You
Yeah.
can see where they got their money. And let's be honest, he's the most vetted person in history. They've gone through
Good
his
Lord.
tax. Good. They went through his tax return.
They went through
for 10
his
years looking
wife's
for something.
underwear drawer.
Right. And they were looking for tax returns. Right. And they found, guess what? They found that he actually paid too much taxes, which is mind-boggling. So he's the most vetted person in history. But you could see where they made their money, and you could see where they lost their money. You cannot see any of that with the Biden crime family. You just can't. And that's a crime family. It's a criminal operation.
Absolutely.
And when it all comes out, and you see the investments in Ukraine as to why we're in there now, and you see that they had biological warfare laboratories in Ukraine, and you see Burisma, and you see this quick change over to the Green New Deal and electric cars. It's all going to come together. You don't have to be Fellini to figure it out. It's all going to come together. And the point
that's something that's affecting us.
Is the media going to tell we the people the facts? And the problem is probably not.
Yeah.
Probably
not since they fired all the truth tellers.
Yeah, I mean, and getting rid of Tucker
got rid of
Carlson, and we were just talking about this off the air. When you look at who Tucker had as guests in his last 2 weeks, he had President Trump on, which I'm sure for the Murdochs was a no-no because they are virulent anti-Trumpers. And then he had Elon Musk on, right, which is another no-no. And then, right, to me, the nail in the coffin was he had Bobby Kennedy on, who came on and just destroyed Big Pharma and their corporate interests. And the fact that if you watch Fox or CNN or MSNBC, it's always brought to you by Pfizer.
Yes.
And he exposed that whole thing. And I think that was the nail in the coffin, is that he had that triumvirate of Trump, Elon Musk, and Bobby Kennedy on, and they were like, well, that's enough of that. We just can't go past it anymore. And look, the other thing too, I think that people don't realize about Tucker Carlson, when you really think about it, he has really been one of the lone voices that has strongly been against our interests in the Ukraine war.
Yes.
And the money that we've put in there. He has been an outspoken critic since the beginning, to the point where they said he was a Russian asset.
Right.
So if you spoke out against our involvement there, you're a Russian asset. But he's been the point person on that from the beginning. So if you put it all together, you can see why the Murdochs wanted him out. And also, I think that, the old man Murdoch, they might be looking to sell.
Yeah.
They might be looking to sell that whole thing.
Well, I mean, at this point in time, and I kind of said this earlier, if they remove Hannity, that's the last vestige of Fox News being Fox News, and it'll basically implode. I love Gutfeld, but he's
that's not news.
He's not a news guy.
It's entertainment. It's great.
Yeah,
it's great entertainment. But
so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm pretty much done at this point in time with Fox, because the only person I really watched was Tucker. I like Brett.
Yeah, same here.
But so I'm kind of done with them. A little disappointed in how that all shook out. But I'll just go back to listen to my podcast and reading and staying informed that way. But folks, you've got to take time for sitting back and being passive, and everything is gone. Please call your state legislators. Call them today. Call your state legislator and say, listen, I think you've got to do something. You've got to take action against Representative Rutherford. If he actually did work about murder, out of jail early, breaking laws, you've got to take action against him, to the point of even having him disbarred if it's called for that. You've got to call and make sure that we get the bills passed for fentanyl to protect our young people, our young Americans, from this poison. And you've got to push to get the shared parenting bill. A lot of things that we need you to get on the phones and make calls about. And then most importantly, when 24 rolls around, if you believe in our country, if you believe in our Constitution, if you are conservative and you have the means and the time to do so, please give prayerful consideration to running for office. I believe that we need to primary every single person in the Ori delegation. Every one of them, from the top to the bottom, needs to be primaried and hopefully beaten and replace with someone who really does understand the Constitution. That is an imperative. It's something that we cannot delay. It's got to be done. Then at 10:30, so just in a few minutes, they're going to have a briefing to discuss this unlawful releasing of a murderer. So pay attention to that, because that's important. It's making national news. South Carolina is once again in the national news, and not for a good thing. So we appreciate you tuning in. We thank you so much, Paige. And we'll be back on Thursday with more information to cover in South Carolina. That's all I've got. So as always.
And if it wasn't enough, also keep an eye on the constitutional carry as that goes through. That's on the agenda for today. It starts today. So keep an eye on that as well. And we'll probably be talking about that on Thursday.
Absolutely. As always, folks, God bless, Godspeed, and we'll see you next time.